Today, Emily and I welcome Olivia Chasteen. Olivia has been a Sympto-Pro Fertility Educator since 2020. In the summer of 2022, she moved into her current role as the Director of Sympto-Pro Fertility Education. In addition to her role with Sympto-Pro, Olivia is a certified lactation consultant and wellness professional. Olivia lives in rural Wisconsin with her husband and children and is passionate about helping women and families find healthier alternatives, especially when it comes to fertility and family planning. She enjoys gardening, learning about native flora, and introducing her children to the beauties of nature. Please help us welcome Olivia to the podcast.
Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're really excited to have on Olivia Chasteen. She is a Sympto-Pro Fertility Educator, and she's the director of Sympto-Pro Fertility. She's based out in Wisconsin. So welcome to the podcast, Olivia. How are you?
Great. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So why don't you give our audience just a little idea of who you are and how you got involved with Sympto-Pro, and then we'll lead into, or you can just lead right into, what is Sympto-Pro Fertility Education?
Yeah. It was, I think, probably 2019, and I had a wellness business at the time and was really working a lot with moms, and I knew Sympto-Pro. I had gone through the course in my own marriage prep, and it's what I was using in my marriage at the time for family planning. And I really wanted to be able to offer it to my clients that I was seeing through my wellness business. So I actually reached out to my local diocese, since that's where I had gotten certified through, that's where I had taken the course originally through them, and asked how I could become an instructor. And long story short, I ended up volunteering to become an instructor with my local diocese. So then I was teaching marriage prep couples. And eventually the director role for Sympto-Pro opened up, and I decided it seemed like a good fit for me. It was something that I enjoyed working with couples, and I guess decided to apply for that role. And I've been in the director role not too long, but since 2022. And it's been great. I feel like my eyes have really opened up to the whole world of NFP since taking on this role as the director. Since prior to that, I'd really only known Sympto-Pro, and now I feel like I know a lot more about all different types of methods, since there are so many out there.
So what is it that's unique about Sympto-Pro? What is Sympto-Pro, fertility education, if you had to share with somebody what it was?
Yeah, so it's a Sympto-Thermal Method. So we track the mucus signs, like the cervical mucus, the sensations, the cervical position, as well as the basal body temperature. And you use that to chart out where your fertile windows are to confirm, okay, we're past the point of ovulation. This is the part of our cycle where we're not going to be fertile. And you just use those biomarkers to figure out where those fertile windows are, and then use that to make your family planning decisions.
So cervical position, that's actually not something that we've talked very much about on this podcast. I don't even know if we mentioned it in the very beginning as something that was somewhat common with NFP, longer time ago, I should say. So what is cervical position? What does that have to do with monitoring or understanding the fertile window?
Right. So now not everyone who charts with Sympto-Pro will chart their cervical position. We let women know that they should chart at least two of the three things. So it's either their cervical mucus, like on a tissue, the sensations, or their cervical position. And from those three, we tell them chart at least two of those along with the basal body temperature. So again, not something that everyone does chart, but you will find that when you check every day around the same time every day, that the cervix changes. It changes in terms of how it feels. It's going to get softer and it's going to feel more open as you approach ovulation. And it's also going to get higher in the cervix. And then after ovulation, it's going to kind of close back down and it's going to feel harder, smaller, and it's going to become lower in the nose. The opening of the cervix is going to come down. So when you're feeling for it, it's going to feel different throughout the course of the cycle.
Do you know about that? I guess like research evidence, has there been a lot of study of cervical positioning?
That one I'm less familiar with in terms of the cervical position. It's always been a part of Sympto-Pro. So it had to be something that the original developers of the method were familiar with because it's always been included in the method. But that one is not research that I'm as familiar with. It seems like more recently, a lot of the more current data that's available doesn't really look at that. So that might be a reason why that hasn't come up as often in conversation.
Yeah, I remember when I was getting my Creighton, when I was in my first education phase, because they break it up into these two different phases. When I was in my first phase, it was an in-person class, and there was a group of maybe 6 of us. And one of the women in there was older, to be honest with you. We were all in our 20s, and she probably could have been our mom. She may have been in her 50s or early 60s, but maybe 50s. I would say 50s. Anyway, she was very young at heart, but she was very fun. And when they were going over biomarkers and we're talking about cervical fluid, she raised her hand because she had used the, quote unquote rhythm method, which is what it was called, right, back in the day. And that's what she and her husband had used. And she talked about cervical positioning. And she's like, oh, yeah, you can feel when your cervix feels soft versus when it's harder, and where it is located, if it's higher, if it's lower. And, the 20-year-olds, we were all like, what? You put your fingers where? You feel what? Very turned off by it. But at the same time, we were all in there, learning how to teach natural family planning. So we weren't completely like, oh, this is just, I can't listen to this. It was just more like, oh, that's so interesting. And really we were curious, is that necessary anymore? Do you have to do that? Or can you just go off of temperature and cervical fluid? But she really liked using that. She felt very comfortable and very confident with that as a marker to know, and cross-checking it, right, with her temperature and with her cervical fluid to know kind of where she was in her cycle. So yeah, I think at first it's just not something that is talked about a lot. And so maybe people can be put off by it. So I guess that's great. Like in using Sympto-Pro, it's not something you have to observe, but that it's not something that is totally random, if you will. Like women have done this for a really long time. And I'm curious in other cultures if women kind of know this, like women around the campfire talk about this. Like, how do you know where you are in your cycle? Well, if they've learned, from their midwives or however it gets around, wherever your cervix is and how it feels, that's a good indicator with these other biomarkers like cervical fluid of where you are in your cycle. So anyway, I just wanted to hone in on that a little bit because we haven't really talked about that very much at all. So, okay. So with Sympto-Pro, when someone is interested in working with a teacher, an instructor, kind of how does that look? Do you work with only couples? Do you work with individual women? What is the appointment schedule look like? Is there an app? Are you using paper charts? Kind of all of those things. What does that look like?
Yeah. So, you could come in just as an individual woman who is looking for courses. We don't really dictate who can take the course. If you're coming in through marriage prep and there's a fiance there who could learn the method with you, that's always a bonus when you have someone who could learn with you, because fertility only happens as a couple anyways. And even if they're not going to help you chart or anything like that we would encourage them to do, but even if they're not going to do that, it's still good for them to learn so that they can understand the basics of why this works. And that's just so important for getting them on board to understand that there is science behind this, there's research behind it. But in terms of the actual coursework, the client course is 3 courses that have to be taken at least 2 weeks apart so that there's time to chart in between. So it takes at least 4 weeks to take the full client course. Each of the sessions takes roughly 2 hours to go through. So session 1 takes about 2 hours, session 2 takes about 2 hours, and then session 3. And when you are meeting with a live instructor, there's a few different formats you can take the course in. If you're doing like live in person with an instructor, you might be doing a live course over Zoom with an instructor. Or on the Sympto-Pro website, you can also take an on-demand course where the session material itself is recorded and embedded into an online classroom, but then all of your follow-ups still happen with a real live instructor. So you get the personalized feedback and you can ask your questions and have the chart reviews. So that's kind of a...
I'm sorry. I was going to say that's more of a self-paced option then for people.
Right. So you do still have to wait 2 weeks before you can start the next session. So it still is going to take at least 4 weeks to take the course, even if you're doing the on-demand version online. And then you chart in between each session and you submit your chart to your instructor, who can then give you feedback. They can offer you personalized guidance based on what your charts look like, any issues that seem to be coming up. If you need help applying a rule, they can help with that. And then once you go through all 3 sessions, then you can get a certificate and you've completed the client course. In terms of charting, we do have paper charts for people who want to chart that way. And previously we did have a Sympto-Pro app, sort of. It was built onto our website, but the management of that just got to be too much. So unfortunately, that's no longer there. But we have partnered with, or we're affiliated with, Read Your Body, and they have a Sympto-Pro template that they're working on putting into their app so that people who have their app and are charting can apply the Sympto-Pro template, and their charts will look exactly like those that they learned in the course.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Yeah. Read Your Body. I had never heard of it. And Marguerite Duane had, she told me about it when we had her on the podcast to interview her. I was like, oh, I haven't heard of that yet. So that's neat. So they're going to create kind of like a Sympto-Pro overlay specifically for your clients, and they can chart Sympto-Pro through the Read Your Body app.
Right. And they are working with other methods as well. So so far they've been really wonderful to work with. They are really trying to kind of expand their approach and who they're able to reach, and just work with all different methods so that they can help women. Another wonderful thing about their app is that they're very much focused on data privacy. So a lot of the charting apps that are out there, they're free, which might upfront seem really wonderful to clients if they don't want to have to pay another ongoing fee in order to have a charting app. But the problem with that is when you have a free app, your data is the product that is getting sold to someone else. And even if they wanted to, Read Your Body could not sell your data because your data is actually stored locally on your phone. Everything is kept very private. They take a very strong approach to client data and security around that. So you don't ever have to worry about your data being sold for information.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really good to know. So for the sessions, you said there's 3 sessions that they have to do. Now, when those are done, I mean, is the couple or the female just kind of let loose? Can they keep following up with their instructor? Or, I guess the 3-session approach, like, is that just 3 sessions and you're finished, or 3 sessions and you have enough information to keep charting, but you should still regularly meet with an instructor to kind of track your charting, make sure you're doing everything correctly, answer your questions? What does the support look like after the 3rd session?
So after the 3rd session, we do recommend that you stay in touch with your instructor for at least your first 6 charts. Not everyone does that. You're kind of left, I guess you're free to choose how you're going to continue that support after you do those 3 sessions. So if you are serious about the method, if this is what you really want to use to plan your family, then I guess we would really, really hope that you would continue to do the follow-up so that you would have that one-on-one support and guidance from an instructor for those first 6 charts. And then the other aspect of that is that once you have that many charts, you might actually be eligible to start using a few other rules since you have a lot more charting data at that point that previously, when you first started charting, you couldn't really apply just because we didn't know what these different biomarkers in your cycle and your charts look like. So working with your instructor for those first 6 charts really makes it so that you can apply the method rules that are best suited for you. And then going beyond those 6 charts, if you ever need a follow-up with your instructor, that's always included. If you just have like, I have a quick question for my instructor, you're always welcome to reach back out to your instructor. If at any point you need kind of a longer follow-up with your instructor, like say you charted for a while, everything went well, but then you had a baby and now you just feel like charting has been very difficult, or you have a lot of questions and not just a simple email, you can also, there's an additional fee for that, but you can do an additional consultation with your instructor at that point to just get more extensive personalized guidance.
Okay, awesome. And then I guess who would you say is the ideal client for Sympto-Pro? A woman in what season of life, if anyone in particular, or all seasons, postpartum, someone who's just trying to avoid a pregnancy. Is this method also helpful for couples trying to achieve a pregnancy? How about the adolescent girl just wanting to monitor her health? Can you talk a little bit about, the population that's best served?
In general, our most common user of the method is someone who comes in through like a marriage prep program. So it's a couple that's coming in usually in their 20s or 30s, and they're looking to take the course for marriage prep purposes. Now, in terms of who can actually use it, it's really open up to anyone in their reproductive life, just because there are different rules that can be applied to different circumstances. You don't have to have regular cycles. You don't have to, you could be postpartum. There's different rules to apply for that. There's different rules to apply once you hit perimenopause, all of that. You don't have to fit into the nice, neat category of, I get my period, I have a 28-day cycle. That's not true, that you have to have perfectly regular cycles in order to use the method, because it's not the rhythm method.
And when you say rules, for different seasons of life, I think my understanding of that is there's just different our understanding of what the body is doing in that particular season, whether that season is pre or postpartum. Understanding what the body is doing, working with a trained instructor is going to help you interpreting those biomarkers, because there's a shift in what how your biomarkers might be showing up, and so working with a trained professional can help you interpret those, so that way you can accurately identify your fertile window. Is that right?
Correct. Yep. And then obviously once you get into postpartum or perimenopause or have irregular cycles, you need to be able to identify, if you're looking to avoid a pregnancy, you need to be able to identify when those fertile windows close and when they open up, so that you can make those accurate choices and that align with what your family planning goals are. There is also research looking at couples who use the Sympto-Thermal Method to try to achieve a pregnancy, and typically they do achieve faster than couples who are just using random intercourse, but that's because they are focusing their intercourse in the time of the cycle when they're most likely to be fertile.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I know. I feel like that's actually, somewhat of a trick question with natural family planning methods with fertility awareness is, who is it for? It's for everybody. It's just knowing how your body works. And then it's a behavior-based method. So once you know how your body is working, well, then depending on what your goal is, whether it's health monitoring, achieving or avoiding a pregnancy, that kind of falls on you. Then you engage in the behavior that corresponds most appropriately with whatever the goal is that you're trying to achieve. But it sounds like Sympto-Pro, similar to other, evidence-based methods, they're really focusing on making sure you have a solid understanding of what it is you're trying to measure, right? What it is you're looking at with the biomarkers, whether it's the cervical position, the cervical mucus, or the basal body temperature. You guys really want women and couples to know, here's what this data is that you're getting. Here's how to collect the data. And here's how to interpret the data so you can be confident users and confident engagers, I guess, really, like with your fertility and with your health, with your body and your relationship. So that's excellent. That's like with most NFP methods, just really trying to empower people with more knowledge and giving them the resources they need so that they can make their individual choices. I did have another question. So do you guys have any affiliated healthcare professionals like doctors or nurses, any trained medical professionals that you collaborate with? Or is it just who would you refer out to? I guess if you were working with a client and you were seeing some type of more or less like abnormal cycle pattern, something that maybe you would, a red flag, right? As an educator that you're trained to say like something might be a little off here. Let's get some medical consultant in here. Who is it that you guys refer out to, or do you refer out to anybody?
We do. Obviously, if there's a cycle indicator that comes up, and our instructors they cover this in instructor training, all the different types of things that you might see in someone's chart and what it could possibly be indicating. But as an instructor, if you don't have any other additional training, you can't make a diagnosis. So that really does have to refer out to a medical professional. We do have some instructors who do have that training and can make those diagnoses, but that's kind of an individual basis. If you're an instructor that doesn't have that extra training as a medical provider, then to refer that out, a lot of times it depends on where your client is located. So like for me locally, I'm kind of in a rural area, so there's not a lot of options in terms of like, I couldn't go to just the local clinic and find someone who would be well-versed enough to know anything about the charts. So there is a specialty clinic in my area that is a NAPRO clinic. And there are two doctors there that, now granted, they don't necessarily teach the Sympto-Pro method, but I have charts. And if I'm charting, I can look at these things in my chart. Or if I had a Sympto-Pro instructor, my instructor is going to tell me what it is in my chart that seems concerning to them so that I could go to a NAPRO doctor and say, can you look at this? This is what I'm concerned about. And you can, even though it's not the exact same method, you can kind of still speak the language in terms of trying to get to a root cause and make sure that there's no bigger issue going on.
Right. And I think that's one of the helpful things across methods is to identify the similarities, right? Like maybe you're not also checking temperature, but we're all checking cervical fluid, right? And I'm having this, luteal phase defect of some kind is happening, right? And we're seeing that in my charting pattern. So maybe it's not on the paper you use or the app you use, but it's the same information here. I feel like that's one of the things that actually sounds encouraging about, the Read Your Body app is this idea of like kind of unifying everybody, right? Like, sure, we've got these different approaches, these different ways of teaching people our understanding of the biomarkers, how to track them, how to interpret them. But then can we also just find some common ground, because there is such a dearth of medical professionals available to help us with a more cooperative, restorative approach to addressing these underlying causes. It would just be really nice if I wasn't fighting like, I didn't use your chart. Well, could you still just help me? Like, because this is the method that I find really helpful. And for whatever reason, the way that you guys do this charting is very confusing to me, and it is a little bit of a barrier to access. But the way that, Sympto-Pro does it is just a little bit simpler, or it's what I originally learned. Or in your case, right, Olivia, you said like, it's all you knew about. Like you didn't even know there were really other methods out there. It would be great to be able to still access that quality medical care. And I think most medical professionals that are trained in any method of NFP are more on board with that now. It's like, okay, well, we're not going to be such a stickler. I feel like there was a time when, if, pretty stickler to like, you have to be doing it this way. It's like, do I really have to be doing it that way? Like push back a little bit on that. Like there's no infighting, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I have heard, I haven't really experienced this, but I have heard that in the past there was a lot more fighting between methods. And I guess it was a little bit more territorial, whereas like I don't feel any downside, I guess, to referring a client to a NAPRO doctor because I want her to get the best treatment possible. And I know that at least in my area, like I said, there's not a lot of other options. There's not a lot of medical providers that have that training and that are going to help her get to that root cause problem so that we can actually get a solution versus just, oh, I'm going to send you to your local clinic and they're just going to tell you, well, if you have a cycle problem, take the birth control pill.
Exactly.
That's not a fix.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's hard. And, there's, different clients or, patients have different levels of confidence, right? Like some women feel more comfortable they would feel fine, right, going to their local clinic because they feel totally confident being an advocate for themselves. Like they are not going to be sold the birth control pill because they know their body, they know their chart, they're kind of more or less leading the appointment. Like, well, doctor, why don't you just test my progesterone and then I just need the results back? Like that's kind of where I've landed after all these years now. Like I'm really just looking for a medical professional that will listen to me and work with me, not tell me what to do, because I kind of I know a lot of this little stuff here. I still want your input, but it's also like, I know my body really well. So if I just need your help in kind of fishing through some of these things and ordering lab tests that I just can't do because I don't have a medical pad. So, but then there's some women who, you just don't feel comfortable. You don't know what questions to ask. And so yes, to be able to go to a provider that's knowledgeable and not the one down the street that might just look at you funny, shame you and say, well, whatever you're doing, that's not going to work. Or they don't have any understanding of the female cycle themselves. And so maybe out of sense of insecurity, they lash out and try to make you feel bad. And then they just offer you the birth control pill, to your point, and it's like, well, that's not really addressing anything. So.
Yeah. And it is really unfortunate because that is what happens the vast majority of time. If someone goes into a clinic and they're having trouble with their cycle, that seems to be the kind of one approach Band-Aid solution to dealing with that versus let's actually look to see why this is happening. And I guess it to me, I just really see that as a huge disservice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, the Band-Aid, kind of a Band-Aid approach. So, and I get, sometimes Band-Aids are helpful, right? They can stop a bleeding, an open wound, but it's not going to heal underlying causes of things. And so I don't know if you've experienced this, but I know when I was teaching and working with women, so many women I would get in their late 20s, 30s, early 30s, mid 30s who would come and they'd been on the pill for a long time and they'd had really painful periods before they got on the pill or whatever it was, and then they were finally getting off the pill and they wanted to have a baby. And we had to go back, right, to like that point in time when they first got on the pill and be like, okay, well, you still have this thing, that whatever was causing that is still there. It hasn't left. And so now it's going to take time because now you're getting off of this Band-Aid, right? Taking this off. And now we're trying to figure out what was happening and correct that and address that. So like the earlier women and couples can learn about this, the better it is just for long-term health and bodily awareness. And then as you go through different seasons of life, like you said, postpartum or perimenopause is another huge shift in a woman's life to know your cycle and to know your body is just super empowering. So, let's see here. Oh, costs. So you said there was a cost for teaching. What does that look like? Does that vary depending? Do your educators set the cost? Do you guys have a set cost that you charge through Sympto-Pro, the organization as a whole, or what does that look like?
So the client course is really going to depend on who your instructor is. All of our instructors, if they are out on their own, they get to set their own price. So some do approach it kind of as more like a ministry, and they will offer courses based on a sliding scale based on what the client can pay. And then we also have some that are incorporating their instruction into an existing business, and so they're setting a solid fee for that, and it's going to be used to compensate them for their time and their expertise. So it really is going to depend. Now, if you're taking the on-demand course through the Instructor Pro or through the Sympto-Pro website, that is $130 for that course. That does not include, you will also need a thermometer, and then you will need the client bookwork that goes along with that, which is $25.
Is that bookwork, that's like a solid book you'd get in the mail? How does that work?
Yes. Well, it depends. You can order a physical book if you are in the US. If you're outside of the US, or if you're in the US and just don't want the physical book, you can get the ebook version of it.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. And you can do all that through the website.
Yes. Yep. And that's the couples guide has gone along with the client course for, again, since its inception pretty much, and it really does go beyond those 3 sessions. So you take those 3 sessions at the 2 hours each roughly, but then there's also reading material that goes along with each of the sessions that kind of helps bring home some of the teaching and also provide a little bit extra beyond what can fit in that 2 hour window.
In your pre-recorded class, is that something that's offered in another language or just English?
Right now, we do offer that in English and Spanish.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, great. Is this something you guys, do you partner with dioceses like around the country? Are you guys in specific dioceses in the United States, or is it just based on wherever your educators are? You know, like, do you guys do all the marriage prep for set dioceses in Wisconsin or whatever?
We do have different dioceses that we partner with, and we offer them resources, whether to train instructors for their particular diocese, or however, kind of, it's flexible depending on the diocese and what their goal is. Not every diocese has a very robust NFP program. It kind of just depends on where you are and what their diocese has set. So, like when I first became an instructor, I was a volunteer instructor for my diocese. My diocese in Wisconsin has a very large Sympto-Pro presence. It's mostly Sympto-Pro, but our NFP coordinator has actually done a really excellent job at making sure that we have at least one instructor to pretty much represent the different methods, so that if you have a client who, for whatever reason, doesn't want to learn Sympto-Pro, or Sympto-Pro is not a good fit for them, they can still learn NFP. They can learn any of the other methods. They're just going to be paired with a different instructor, because I'm not going to be the one to teach them.
I guess, how would you direct a couple who is coming from a contraceptive mindset, or what is the Sympto-Pro approach to dealing with the relationship aspect of this, right? Because NFP is not just a method to track your cycle, but it's also an approach to relationship, right? An approach to marital intimacy that is very different from just, you take a pill every month. Now you don't have to talk about it. It doesn't really come up on a regular basis. There's not this self-sacrificing you're having to do, maybe uncomfortable conversations you're having to have, this dichotomy between my desire and what I can actually do based on my intentions to achieve or avoid a pregnancy. You know, I want to engage in intercourse, but we're fertile and we don't want to achieve a pregnancy right now, so we technically can't engage in intercourse. Emily and I talk about that as one of the real struggles with NFP. Especially if you're coming to it from a worldview that, you know, sex should be on demand, and or not should be. It just is. You know, it's like you didn't even know that there was another way. And then coming here, you know, to a natural approach, you're really seeing like, oh, this demands self-control. It demands regular conversation, sharing of our heart. There's hurts that can happen. I mean, it can get really messy when we look at that aspect of NFP. So does Sympto-Pro offer anything in their courses that kind of help assist couples through that? Or is it strictly kind of the science and getting you charting?
Yeah, so session 1 does kind of cover, I think, getting at what the couple needs to look at. We cover kind of the different reasons why people choose to do NFP. We are honest about the fact that it's not easy for everyone. You know, it is a sacrifice, especially like if a woman's libido is only high around the time of ovulation and they're trying to avoid a pregnancy. Well, what else can they do? You know, at the end of the day, should not be the only part of their marriage. That we need to look at different ways that we can have conversations. How can you show intimacy in other ways other than intercourse? And so, I mean, that is addressed in session 1. We also do require that all of our instructors have charted the method. Now, granted, we don't require that they have all charted the method to avoid, but all of our instructors are familiar with kind of the sacrifice that it takes to chart, and what does the daily process look like. And hopefully, as part of that, they've been introduced to the idea of what does this look like in terms of a conversation with my partner and my spouse, and to be able to navigate some of those more difficult conversations, so that when I have a client who's coming to me and saying that this is too hard for me, I can't do it, that they can walk with them and maybe offer them some different ideas that they might not have thought of previously. And it isn't always easy by any means. I think looking at some of the studies in terms of how many times intercourse happens over the course of a month, the data that I have looked at shows that couples that use NFP versus couples that use contraception, like hormonal contraception, they end up having intercourse roughly the same amount of times per month. It's just that where those times fall on a calendar is different. Whereas one might just be sprinkled throughout the course of the month. The ones that are using NFP, if they're looking to avoid, those times of intercourse are concentrated at the beginning or the end of the cycle. It's not in the middle. So it's still, that idea of spontaneity and being able to have intercourse whenever you want goes out the window to some degree, but there is still other things that you can do at that time, and trying to focus on the other aspects of your relationship, even when it does get hard.
Yeah, Emily and I have talked about that, the spontaneity component, and how for her and I, that's not really something that is a barrier to enjoying marital intimacy. Is like, well, if it's not spontaneous, it's just not as enjoyable. I'm like, no, it's still like a pretty enjoyable act, even if I know it's coming. It's kind of like, cake or any type of dessert. Like, well, I know I'm going to have pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving, so it's just not as enjoyable as if I just randomly fall on a pumpkin pie and I get to enjoy it. Like, no, it's pretty tasty, kind of no matter when I have it, if I have it planned or if it's not planned. So I think the spontaneity is one of those false things that we've gotten from our culture of sex as an object of use, as opposed to an object of, or an act of union and unity between a couple, because it's been romanticized in a way that's, oh, well, if it's not spontaneous and animal like, then it's just not, it's not good intercourse. And it's like, no, like that's actually not true. It's not true. And I think that that's not said enough, like, no, knowing and planning and, being responsible, it's still very enjoyable. It's an intimate part of your relationship. So that's one of the things I think whenever I meet a couple and we're moving away from what I would say like the contraceptive mentality, or just that the contraceptive worldview or approach to sex, where I'm not having to think about it or talk about it really. It's just kind of whenever we want. And we're moving away from that. It's pushing back on a lot of those things. Like, is it really not enjoyable if it's not spontaneous? Like, how important is the spontaneity factor here, people? Because I think it's just something that's said and it's not really thought of. Like, oh yeah, it's actually, yeah, you're right. It's still enjoyable even if it's not completely spontaneous. So I'm
The
glad
other thing along with that is anyone who has kids understands that when you have kids, the degree of being able to just drop everything and have intercourse whenever you want, that doesn't exist. So you realistically have to plan around that sometimes. And so if you have kids, you're already doing that. It just changes at what part of the month you're doing that at.
Right. For sure. And that is not, these comments here, it's not to belittle or I guess not recognize like someone's real struggle with kind of this shift in understanding. I get it. It is hard when you have been, living or approaching this aspect of your marriage from a certain way to then shift to another aspect of it, or another approach it is definitely challenging. It can feel hard. But I think that's another aspect of working with a trained instructor, someone who's gone through it, like you said. So all of the Sympto-Pro teachers have used Sympto-Pro at some point, and they can really talk to those lived experiences. Like, I've been there. I know what that feels like. And you can do this. You can get through it. It just feels hard. It doesn't mean it's impossible.
Right, definitely. And that is the benefit of working with that instructor and having someone who's been there to have those hard conversations with.
Right. Okay. So I think that's kind of all the questions I had. I'm going to link in the show notes, you guys, to the Sympto-Pro Fertility Education website. I'll link to the on-demand class, but that's also, in the website. I'll just put direct links to make it a little bit easier, and the Read Your Body app as well. Anything else? Are you guys on any social media that we should link to, or anything else you'd want to leave our audience with before we wrap up our discussion here?
Yeah, we do have Facebook. We have Instagram. So we're a few different places. Every once in a while, we'll run like a contest so that someone could get like a discount on a course or like a free intro course, something like that. So feel free to follow us. And, if anyone ever has questions too, our team is always happy to answer questions.
Awesome. And I see you guys also do a newsletter. Is that right? So people can sign up for the newsletter through your website?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So I'll put that link in the show notes as well. So
that wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.